Hey everybody, this is Erin Lefebvre, a plant priestess and herbalist with Full Circle Herbals and the author of the Learning Herbalism Workbook. Today I'm coming here to talk to you about how to grow lavender. Probably one of the most well-known essential oils, smells, herbal ingredients, I think, in our society right now is lavender and probably mint close by. So if you're here watching this live, let me know. Hello, Jennifer. And I'll also be posting this as a podcast in my Herbs podcast, Herbs with Erin, Remedies for Body and Spirit. So for those listening now, you're live here with me in YouTube, Facebook page, and perhaps in my Facebook group, Plant Priestess Exploration Facebook group. So I'm going to start here in just a minute or so talking about how to grow a lavender. If you aren't already registered and are considering the Plant Priestess Exploration Workshop, the free workshop starts April 19th and goes until the 22nd. There's 4 days. And each day is a live like this at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time in the Facebook group Plant Priestess Exploration and in my YouTube channel. As well as new this time around is at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be doing practice sessions in Zoom only. All of these replays will be available and will be sent to you through email. That's why it's a good idea to join. Even if you've been on my past Plant Priestess Exploration workshops, sign up for this one, because then I know you want the reminders for the April, Plant Priestess Exploration Workshop. This theme for this round is remembering our roots. So we're going to we're going to learn about roots, medicinal herbal roots, learn about what roots do, what their functions are, and then reflect that back into our human lives and what that all means. So if you know anything about me, I know there's a lot of new people in this group and on this page, is that I definitely blend in nature-centered spirituality in with herbalism and use it for mind, body, spirit, all of the things, all of the ways that we experience life. So that's what the Plant Priestess Exploration is in a nutshell. And we'll get that link to everybody if we can in the comments soon afterwards. So hello, everybody. I see people jumping in. All right. And then next week, I'll be opening up the retreat registration, the Herbal Wisdom Retreat that I'm having in July. And it's face-to-face here in Wisconsin in a really beautiful place called Stargaze and Woodland Retreat Center in Augusta, Wisconsin. And it's outside with these tiny dwellings, think tiny houses, and they're all situated outside, spread apart. And we do our lessons outside. If there's inclement weather, then we'll go inside in a big space. And there's lots of room for social distancing. It is going to be a smaller group, probably around 13 people. And each little cabin, little mini dwelling is a little bit different. Some are a little bit more elaborate, but they're basically semi-rustic. We have portable restrooms outside. There's private solar showers outside and electricity in almost all the cabins. So it will run from anywhere from about $650 to $800, depending on what kind of amenities you have. There's some camping sites too. So semi-rustic, we have running water, we have electricity, and there's probably only going to be one person per dwelling, unless you're from the same household, and potentially if you're vaccinated. It just kind of depends on CDC recommendations, but we'll definitely have lots of space. I myself have started the vaccination process. So anyhow, we're talking about lavender today. So lavender, I did talk about some of the uses of it in a previous live that I did. And so I've already went into what lavender is used for and how to use it. So I wanted to tell you all how to grow it. So some specifics for me are specifics on how to grow it and how it functions. Let's just start out with what it prefers. So it is a Mediterranean plant as it had originated, and we've moved it around as humans for thousands of years. There's definitely recorded history that we've been using it for well over 2,000 years that we can see in the records, even well beyond that. And it's been used for washing, for the scent and the smell and the uplifting and aromatherapy that it has. It loves to grow in zones, USDA hardiness zones 4 through 9. So here in the United States, we have growing zones that are based on what the lowest temperature that a plant can withstand. And also it does give some of how much heat it can too, but it's basically based on how cold a plant will survive. And so here in Wisconsin, where I'm located, I am in one of the growing zones of the 4A, 4B. So I will say that lavender does grow here in zone 4. However, it's really considered a tender perennial. It will come back after year after year, but the tender part of it is if it's been a harder winter than usual, or the lavender plant wasn't protected with some mulch, then it can die off that year. So there's different little microclimates around. There's a couple places in Wisconsin it can grow in abundance, but for me, it's a tender perennial. I can usually get lavender to grow for about 2 to 3 years before it goes and dies off. So it can grow up to zones 9. And so 4 to 9 is quite a range here in the United States. And so you'll be able to grow lavender in a wide variety of places. Now, there are different varieties of it. They call it Spanish lavender, English lavender, French lavender. There's all these different species of it. So some are more hardy, some have more prolific blooms, some are on the lavender side, some are on the pink side. And so we've, as humans, have made many different kinds of it by growing it and crossing it and things like that. So it's in the Lamiaceae family, also known as the Labiata family. So if you know what that family is, the common name of that family, please feel free to put it in the comments. We'll see if you know what plant family it is. I'm using the scientific terms Lamiaceae and Labiata. One of those terms is older and we don't use it as much, but let me know if you know what kind of herb that is, the herb family that is. So see if you can guess what plant family the Lamiaceae is. I'll tell you in a little bit if we don't get the right, if I don't see it in the comments here. So it will grow as a short plant and can get very big as a shrub. Just depends on what growing zone it's in. It depends on what kind of climate it's in, what kind of growing conditions it has, things like that, and the variety of it. So yeah, it can grow at different heights, and it will grow year after year typically, and it also will bloom, have more prolific blossoms depending on which growing year it's in. So usually growing is 2 years to 5 years old. That's about the time you're going to get the most blooms. And after that, it can decline. There's some ways to keep it blooming too, and which I'll talk about. Yes, mints. Yes, this lavender is in the mint family. There are many herbs in the mint family, and most of us think of mints as peppermint, spearmint, but there's also things like lavender that doesn't have mintiest smell to it, but definitely is in it. And there's other things that we don't typically think of, like Creeping Jenny or Creeping Charlie, it's called, that don't have the mint kind of smell to them at all. But they're very fragrant, that's for sure, in the mint family. So lavender, if you're not familiar with it, it does have these slender lance-like leaves. Some of them are really thin, some of them are broader. The spike of a flower comes above the leaves, and it does have a couple different shapes about it. Sometimes it has more of a fringed flower blossom that comes off of it. Sometimes it's very small, but in general, they have a spike for sure, and they come above the leaves. So it loves to be in full sun and well-drained soils with a bit of sand in it. It really loves well-drained soils and full sun. If it doesn't have those things, it still can grow. It just doesn't thrive as much. If it doesn't have full sun, it's not going to get as many blossoms on it either. Yes, so definitely in the mint family. Some of you have definitely got that. And the rosemary that somebody put on here is also in the mint family. So some other things about growing lavender, it can be grown from seed and from propagation. So the soft, succulent part of the tip of a stem can be clipped off and put into soil that is kept, fairly moist, not too wet, not too dry, and eventually the roots will grow from that plant. So it takes a little bit of, really watchful eye with that soil so it doesn't dry out, but it can be created through cuttings, through propagation with lavender, and it can be grown from seed as well. So lavender augustifolia is typically what's used for herbal remedies. There's lots of varieties. One of the varieties that does well in USDA hardiness zone 4, where I am, is one of them called Munstead. Munstead. Lavender variety Munstead. It doesn't have as much of a prolific bloom to it, but it is hardy to this area. So it's not one of those plants that's going to give you a huge production. It's not going to give you a huge harvest, but you certainly can enjoy it. And use the leaves as well. The leaves have the lavender smell and the essential oils in them, so you can use them for teas and anything else that you're going to do with making herbal remedies with lavender. Most people don't have the setup to make their own essential oils, and it takes a lot of plant material to make your own essential oils. So most people, aren't making their own essential oils. They're purchasing them or, making herbal oils and teas with the lavender blossoms or the leaves. So it doesn't necessarily need a lot of nutrients, which is kind of the overall theme of many of the herbs that are grown for culinary use for sure, and some of the herbal ones too. They just do really well, kind of just left alone, and some techniques that we can do to help them out. But once in a while, you can top dress the soil around it with some compost, some low fertilizer, nothing very strong. And if you're mulching around it with some hay, straw, mulched up leaves or something like that every year to keep the other plants, the weeds, from growing up around it, that organic matter decomposing could be enough soil nutrients going back into the soil for the plant too. So it's not a heavy feeder. It can withstand having some of drought-like conditions for a little while. However, it will reduce the amount of blossoms if it's kept in that drought situation for too long. But it's not a plant that needs a lot of water all the time. So that's kind of cool about these, that they just kind of want to be left to be. Now, after the second season of growing, or maybe even the third, you want to get some good growth on it. One of the things that can be done for going into the dormant season, the winter season, is prune down the lavender plant to about 2 to 3 inches left from the ground. Now, the rule of thumb I always say about pruning or trimming anything is don't take more than 1/3 of the overall plant. But if you're going into the dormant season, you've waited until the plant has brought down, most of its nutrients down close to the crown. Things are starting to die back at the top. Then if you cut it down to about 3 inches from the soil, then it actually helps it get through the winter. And it also takes off some of the middle on the top, the leaves. And so when it comes back out in the summer, it will produce new leaves and have spaces for the flowers to come out as well. So it can get very bushy. But typically, we're looking at lavender plants in about a foot range or so. And we're talking for home gardens. Commercial production of lavender is a different kind of ball game, so to speak. The other thing about lavender is it can be grown in a container. It will do well in it. But just remember, if you have a very cold dormant season, you're going to have to protect that container. You don't want it to sit above ground because it will freeze right through and it will kill off the roots. It's best to create a hole in the ground big enough for your container, put the container in the ground and make it look like it's in there at soil line with the plants sticking out like you would see any other of your herbs in the garden, and then put the soil around the pot, and that creates like an insulation so that it will go through the dormant season, just like all the other plants. So lavender is fun to grow, and like I said, for home gardeners, we typically don't get a huge harvest or production unless you have many plants and have a really good like microclimate in these colder areas such as Wisconsin to withstand the winter pressure. Like I said, there's some spots in Wisconsin that are these nice microclimates where they're kind of protected from the harsh winters, and it's a little less intense, and they can get away with like a zone 5 kind of situation, which is really helpful for lavender. Yeah, so that is my tips on growing lavender. If anybody's grown lavender from seed, I would love to know your success rate with that. I haven't done too much of growing lavender from seed, but I would love to know anybody who's had that kind of experience. Usually I'm just purchasing it from people who've already started it. It's easier on me with the little house that I'm in, not as much room to move and grow things inside during that cool spring weather that we get. So if you want to know more about how lavender is used, check out one of my other lives. It should be in my YouTube channel under Full Circle Herbals, or if you're in the Plant Priestess Exploration free Facebook group, it's in there as well. So somebody is saying, you say full sun, full Texas sun too? Well, I hear that can be pretty intense down in Texas, but if you're in a zone that's 9 and less, within that zone 4 to 9, then definitely it's going to grow there as well. But if you feel like where you're growing lavender, the sun is really going to hit it and be really intense all day long, then you may want to consider kind of tucking it up against something else that's growing so it gets a little bit of shade during the day. That may be something you want to consider. Some shade is not going to harm it, but full sun usually means like 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight. Morning sun is usually not as strong, and that's not considered direct sunlight. And the only having the sun at the end of the day is not as direct either. So you're kind of looking around that noonish time if possible. But some other places, also have lots of humidity, and you have to take those into consideration. So like I said, sometimes tucking them up against other things can be beneficial. Yeah, and Nikki is saying, I started a few lavender from seed last year and they didn't get very big, but I'll see if they come back this year. And that can happen in that first year with plants that you grow from seed. They just kind of take a little while to get started. That's why usually in the first year of growing something, whether you're transplanting it into your garden or starting it from seed, usually we just leave that herb or perennial alone, let it get established, to get the roots settled, let it grab the sunlight and start harvesting it for itself and make a really good system. And sometimes we'll even say, don't harvest from the second year growth either. Let it get really established. Yeah, some of those seeds, I suspect lavender might be one of those seeds that takes a while to even germinate There are some plants that'll germinate in the first few days of getting in touch with that soil and the water, and there are other seeds that take a couple weeks or more. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining in on this live. Like I said, I'm going to turn this into a podcast, so I'll have it in the Herbs podcast in Spotify and iTunes. So I think we're in SoundCloud now too, so we're both in there. If you're watching the replay, let me know, or if you're listening to the replay, drop a comment or review for the podcast. So thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a good spring day.